They've taken our SIRS contact away, but they may still be nearby. I can reconstruct the vehicle's path from unsecured CCTV recordings. That should allow you to follow it.
Michael Huber.
Brandon Jones.
You and I have been getting down with Ubisoft lately.
Yes.
We had to split up. I think playing games that either one of us could have easily played the other game. I could have easily played Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I had a wonderful time, but I didn't. I played Watch Dogs Legion, baby.
Nice.
And I got way more experience with Assassin's Creed. I have played Watch Dogs 1 and 2, played a little bit more of 2, but very little of both. And so I think I've played about as much Watch Dogs Legion as I have any of the other games in the franchise. I got to play 4 hours of this.
Wow.
I got to, run around, do a lot of stuff. According to my handler, I did get through, like, the main demo portion of the game. Of course, I could have just completely skipped any of the story stuff and, like, just gone and recruited people. But you are a huge fan of Watch Dogs 1 and 2. You talk about Watch Dogs 2 all the time.
I love 2.
So this was interesting. There was a lot of stuff that I picked up that I enjoyed about Legion. Obviously, lots of questions about raising this army and how this revolution would work from a gameplay perspective. But there was a lot of things I was like, oh, right, hacking. It's like I just haven't really spent a lot of time with the series. And so I remember when I played Watch Dogs 2 for a couple seconds, my favorite thing was just making parked cars go.
Yes.
I would just literally, all these parked cars were on the line side of the street, and I would just go, turn left, turn left, turn left, turn left, and they would all just crash into cars and stuff.
Oh, that's such a Jones thing. I love that.
So I did a little bit of that, but definitely really wanted to focus on what I was curious about and potentially a lot of questions that people have about Watch Dogs. Started out in a prologue that I can't get into the specifics or show, but just introduces you to the story, introduces you to characters, here's how to hack, here's how to shoot, and then jumped ahead at a point. It was actually very well disguised. I wasn't able to kind of tell, even going back through the footage, it's like, I think this is when there's a time jump, but I think it moves past the point where now you know the story, now you know what really makes up DedSec in their current state, who they're fighting against, and what their goals are, and now we're going to get into just freely being able to go out to the city and being like, hey, do you want to join DedSec and jump in? I think obviously the big thing of this game is you get to recruit all of these people. And
how did that work?
A lot of it, a lot of my estimation went up in terms of specifically how this functions. But at the same time, some of the stuff that they talked about helped me understand kind of how limited in scope you might be trying to put all this together, because you think to yourself, like, I can go out there and get anybody.
Yeah.
And you can. But the one thing that I didn't think about is, like, do you want to do that? Like, is that actually going to be advantageous for you? Like, are you? It's kind of like Pokemon. You know, it's like, yeah, you can go out and catch whatever Pokemon, but like, you obviously want to get someone that fits your team. You know, you want to get someone that's interesting to you. And so you might have somebody that has a particular, set, but you don't really like that person, like their style, or you're like, no, I want to bring a gal on the team, or like specifically the last person I recruited, I was like, I want to get an old person because that was like a thing, when the game was first announced. One thing that they focused on in the gameplay demo that they showed, they had a little 15-minute video that I watched, which was actually nice. It wasn't a part of the presentation. I got to watch that on my own. But please watch this 15-minute thing before you come into your session. So this was separate from my 4 hours that I got to spend with the game. And they said that, so the reaction to everybody seeing these characters was so great that they're like, clearly this is the win here with this game. We really want to make these characters feel unique. We really want to not only make their personalities fun, but really have you specialize to see someone and then almost immediately tell, like, oh, I need one of them because I'm about to go do that mission. And one of the things that was already on my crew when I started, and they focused on the demo thing, was a construction worker. So one of the big things, kind of Hitman style, that I'm obviously going to be collecting is if you get a cop, if you get, someone that is on the inside, that then joins DedSec, they have their uniform, they can get in somewhere and they don't raise as much attention.
Oh, wow.
And so a lot of the stealth sections are like very Hitman, where you have a huge group of people in a very populated area, but there's only that one guy who will actually notice, wait a minute, like, you're not on my team, or I don't know you, or what are you doing here? And so it's kind of like, hiding in plain, like just wide open space, in plain view of everybody. Wasn't as tense or as complex in some of those instances as a Hitman would be. It's like, if I had the construction lady, construction sites were easier to get into. But some of them...
I really like that idea. I love that concept, Jones. That's
or you
amazing.
can just say no. You just, I don't care. I'm going to bring in my, like James Bond dude, and he's just going to run in and, stealth everybody with his silenced pistol, and who cares? But if you're like, no, I'm, I have this mission coming up. And they definitely did set that up in the story. There was a guy that I went to go get. Albion is like the major tactical, the private military corporation that's like taken over the city. They're separate from the police. and I grab somebody from that group, and then the next story mission I have, they kind of set up like, see, this is a lot easier now that you have this person. But they all have personalities, they all have special abilities. What they focused on here is that you might want to bring in somebody based on a secret weapon that they have. There's one guy who's a spy who has a car. He has his own like little, James Bond spy car, which can cloak, has rockets, so some people you might want because they're easy to get in somewhere. Somebody you might want because you just like their style, seeing them walking down the street. But sometimes, and this is what I think just takes a little bit away from the freedom I think some people are expecting going into this. Sometimes you're just going to need a person, there was a lot of times where I would just kind of like walk down the street shopping, just be like, look at that guy. And there were some people you're like, that's almost kind of like hard mode. It's like I would see like a transient. I'd see somebody just peddling for money, and it's like, well, that guy has no skills. Like that guy doesn't have a special weapon he brings to the table. But like, maybe I want to give this guy a chance. Like, I wonder if he would be grateful, or if, psychologically he would have some stuff that he's dealing with. I don't know. I didn't recruit him, but and likewise, there are people that had vices. Whereas I can bring somebody in, light sentence was one of my favorite notable abilities, so it's a shorter arrest time. So when they get arrested, if I'm a police officer or if I'm in the mafia or something, like I might not need to be in jail as much as somebody else. But some people might have a super cool gun or ability, but the trade-off is they actually spend a lot of time in prison because, they're famous. Some people were marked as like, this person's kind of people know who that is. And so that's
sounds
like the opposite
really
of
cool.
a construction worker or police officer, where like if they just wander in, so people are like, hey, wait, it's that singer or that's,
So Jones, on paper, the very concept of this sounds awesome. Is it convincing? When you recruit these people, does it feel natural that they join your cause? Do they all have their distinct personality? Are they VO'd by different people? Like,
yes.
Do they really feel different?
So one thing that I was curious about going into it, because the cover of the game is just this like pig mask with a cigar, and I'm like, it is a little bit of a bummer that the game doesn't have an identity. Like a lot of open world games will primarily focus on like one or two, or in the case of GTA 5, 3, like central protagonists, and then there's all sorts of other people that I can meet throughout the story. And I was like, is this going to take a hit because there's not that one person to grab onto? After I got through the prologue, which I did play one character, they threw me into another character, Joseph Kahn, who is a hacktivist and had very like hacking abilities. And it's like, do we all start with him? Do they kind of roll the dice and give me like a random hacktivist to play as? Like, who are the main people that I'm going to be following? And so in DedSec, there is 2 or 3 central characters that will show up in a lot of the cutscenes. Some of them you can play as, some of you can't. And so for some story missions I did, the character I was playing as didn't really talk that much. Like, they weren't really involved in the story. But other times they talked a lot. Like what was crazy was like I would recruit someone, and then the first thing they would do was recruit someone else. Whoa. And so like I would have a person talking to the new recruit, and they'd be going back and forth, and I'm just thinking like, how much VO is required? Because they don't know who I'm bringing to this. And like sometimes even just an aside where somebody would be like, wow, that door looks tough to get into, or wow, there's a lot of enemies here. I'm like, wait a minute, I said that. And it's like, what happens if I bring a doctor or a cop or a security guy? Like, do they all have a line for that, or how deep does that go? And how much can you really test that in any one playthrough? So the only bad thing is it kind of got confusing, actually. Like, I wasn't sure, and I communicated this to him when I was done with the demo. Like, when I finally got into that period, where I was like, okay, I did a couple story missions. Let me just goof off and recruit some people and figure out how to do that. It was tricky to realize, like, what do I need to do? Because when you can look at someone, you can flag them. So at one point, I was in a building, and there was a security guy, and I was like, oh, I don't have someone that belongs to this company. I should probably get that guy. And then I could just tag him, like, see you later, buddy, and then finish the mission. And actually, at one point, one of those people walked in front of me, and like they were labeled something specific, and I'm like, whoa, who's this guy? Is that a story thing? And I'm like, oh, it's the guy. Like, I labeled you. And so it was neat seeing him just shopping, just like out in the world. It's totally different what you have to do every time. So like for one, they had a friend that was recently kidnapped, and I had to go in and rescue them. And so the way I did it is I brought in a guy who belonged there, who was like one of the Albion operatives, and so he just walked right up to a cop who's like, hey, I'm beating up this protester, and like I snagged him and like rescued the dude, and then like got him in a car, had to drive him somewhere. Some people themselves needed to be rescued, which I just kind of brute forced my way in. And obviously all the hacking stuff applies. Quick hacks with L1, or you can hold it and then specifically like disarm something, or the shock hack was something that Joseph Kahn, the first guy that I jumped into. Some people have that, which is just a simple shock your phone. So just anybody in the world, you can stun them for a couple seconds. So the good news is it is very, it is varied in terms of what you have to do to recruit them. Some things are done very quick. Some things are a little more elaborate. Some things take multiple stages. So there's like the thing you have to do to get their attention, and then the thing you have to do to get them to like you, and then they tell you to do something and I'll join you, and then you have to do that. Whereas other people, I just did one thing and they joined. So I don't know if that's in terms of how involved they are in the story, or if the more abilities or the more special somebody is, maybe, you might want to join them. Or you might want them to join up. And it's the only thing that I think will influence your decision. Is there's some people that walked by me where I was like, damn, like they just had like 5 abilities. And it's like, why wouldn't I choose that person? Yeah. So there is a value there that I could see some people being like, well, I don't have a ton of freedom because I don't want to recruit, dumb people that can't do anything. Or you might, it might be fun to, like this old gal that I grabbed at the end, like she couldn't run and she couldn't stealth. Like she had really good hacking abilities, but she couldn't do any of that other stuff. And so, and you can see it clearly, like in red, it's like, note that, yes, this guy gets a discount on clothes, but he's also a shopaholic. So you might switch over to him and he spent all his money, or I don't know how that works.
Is there a limit to how many people you can have on your roster at any time, or can you just keep recruiting?
I don't know. I don't know why there would be specifically, because if you go back to your base, you can see them standing around, but I don't know if that's everybody. When I finished the demo, I had 7 people on my team that I'd swapped back and forth between, and I had 3 people in the wings that I had like marked. And I'm like, I'll get back to you sometime later.
And
do they 2 or 3 extra people?
Do they level up when you're using them or not using them, or
didn't do enough of it to see them specifically get any abilities? I think it's more focused on how can I use this person to then help me get someone else. Cool. And obviously, if you just fail, like I brought in a cop in one mission and she got taken out and arrested, and then had to wait for that cooldown to run out before I could get access to her again. But it was pretty easy to start over. So when I switched as another character, he was right there where like she, in front of the building where she was doing the mission. And whenever you swap characters, if you do a mission and someone would help, they'll let you know. So like if you check the map, it's like, FYI, someone on your team can actually get in here earlier if you care. And if you switch to them, it doesn't go like back to HQ or something. They just pop up right at that spot. And so all the swapping was pretty painless.
Nice. And then how was the open world? How was London?
London was great. Drove a ton of different types of cars. It was very easy to drive cars, and didn't get into really. It was easy to evade cops. Like I didn't really have to do any kind of fancy hacking of like throwing a car in front of me, or there's like barriers because it's like a very hardcore police state. Like security terminals everywhere, cameras everywhere, drones everywhere, cops everywhere. And so, even just driving, you kind of get that stealth vibe of like all eyes on me, or I'm one, mistake away from like these walls all popping up and then I'm in trouble. But I did, a couple times I had to run away from the cops, and it wasn't too tough. So.
Yeah, 2 had obviously there's a lot of intense things going on in 2, but it was still so playful. Do you get the playful tone in Legion, or is it very serious police state, high stakes? Like what is the vibe there?
It's the story's about terrorism, so like there is a very serious overall theme, I think, once you actually get into the story missions, but like it's extremely playful in what you can do. The dialogue's very playful. When you pick a character, they scream at you. Like they'll say something when you pick one person. A lot of times when I switched to the construction lady, she's like taking a selfie of herself. Like so, there's a lot of personality once you actually get into the characters and go about the missions. But the main thrust of the story is for you to figure out who's perpetrating these bombings. So there is a serious nature. When you go to HQ, it's very playful. You can like just swig a beer when you're at HQ and hear some of the people that you've recruited having conversations with other people. So.
And then last question, I think, is how was the combat? Because I loved in 2, Marcus, wasn't a killer. It wasn't about, he doesn't want to kill anyone. Like, you're not going out guns blazing. It was more stealth, knocking people out. What, did you get the sense of that? Or one
of the first knockouts I did, I felt bad because it was with the construction gal, and she has a huge wrench. It was like her main like melee weapon. So I clocked a guy, and I'm like, I think I just knocked you out. I'm not sure. That was a 3-foot wrench to the head. And I could cloak people. I don't know if some characters could do that and some couldn't, but you can like cloak someone so that they're invisible to people if they see them. And so there are ways that you can stealth your way through. It was serviceable. Like there were traps. They're like you can arm a trap, but I kept looking at it being like arm trap. Why is it an arm trap? I'm like, oh, arm the trap. So it took me out a little bit seeing that stuff in some of the environments. It's just kind of it's like a red barrel, it's just kind of perfectly placed to utilize in some situations. I imagine as I would go along, I would use those things as a crutch if I just needed to like hide really quick or like take out a bunch of targets at once. Nothing in the combat took me out of it. I even though I did have 4 hours to play, I didn't necessarily goof off that much, with a lot of the abilities. They pointed out that the construction people have a drone that they can get on and fly in, so you can just like if you have a construction person, you just basically just fly around the map.
Cool.
Like an idiot. Didn't do any of that. But nothing really. Like the time I died, I was just being stupid. I just like got flanked and put myself in a dangerous situation. So I'm kind of muted on the combat. It wasn't something that I would say is doing things that other open world games have done, other shooters have done. It was the cover system was pretty easy to pick up. And like I said, because I was disguised most of the time, I was just going into places. I didn't have to worry about combat until things really just kind of got ugly. Because like I would go in as a cop, or I would go in as someone who isn't going to flag people until like I can get near the end of the objective and then just get it done and run out. So yeah, was not blown away the combat, but it did not slow me down at the same time. Because I love open world games, man, and I love just the details and seeing what people do, and the GTA 5 swapping characters. Like, what's Trevor doing right now? What's Franklin doing right now? Not only can you track people individually what they are doing at any given moment on the map, you can deep profile them, Huber. So you can go in and see what they did yesterday and the day before and the day before to the hour.
Holy crap.
So you go in, you can see like their whole lifestyle. You'll just, again, like I just walked by one dude. So if you flag enough people, you might finish a mission and be like, okay, what do I want to do? Oh, there's that. Let me just go get them right now. I'll just go over and talk to him and I can start that mission. Yeah. But just the detail of, not only getting to know these characters and obviously just establishing a sense of realism in that, like what they do minute to minute each day, but also helps me get to know the city a little bit because I can track where that is, or like this is the page you would want to go to get a sense of like, this is where I finally went, where I was like, that's the button. And then I could see like, okay, that's how I recruit her. It's like, well, she shops here, and so she might be here at this certain time of day, or there's a rumor that she's been partnering with these people that she wants revenge on, or so on and so forth. So you use that to try to figure out, how you can please them and get to to recruit them. But just that specific detail, going down that list was really fascinating. And I wonder if it's going to be really interesting for people that live in London, as I've mentioned GTA 5 several times, and I just love growing up in LA and driving around that city. And
Watch Dogs 2 in San Francisco is just so awesome to cruise around in.
So there were definitely, I went to the Tower of London. I went, there were lots of, and obviously it's a very, like I said, it's a very like hyper police state. So, technically there's a lot of stuff that's been set up around the city that is obviously not there now. But there were a lot of power conducting, rerouting puzzles. Just a lot of like swap to cameras. I assume this is something probably Watch Dogs that does a lot, where then you just like rotate the thing and then, now that power can move along. That was if there was a lot of like, not even my specially picked character can get me into this building. That was a lot of the stuff that got me in there. The construction worker had a nail gun. Also didn't use. Feel bad.
Nail gun, wrench, and drone. I'm going full construction.
The first guy I grabbed, Huber, I just walked past him on the street, professional hitman. I was like, boop, label that guy. Okay. And then like finished the story mission. Then I'm like, all right, Keith Malloy, let's do it.
Clearly not a professional hitman if he's a professional hitman.
Hacked, he wants people in the right circles to know who he is. I have Desert Eagle he comes with. Also gun kata takedowns. So when he just grabs somebody and kills him, it's a very stealthy, quick thing. And a combat roll, which other people didn't have. So like a quick, evasive dodge that only he can do. And so I don't think that there's any like teaching people of abilities. I don't think you can take someone and then customize them to what you want. Like you were talking about leveling up. Like I did not get a sense of any of that. I think it's just you going and grabbing somebody that is just perfect for that job. Character number 4 that I played out, Russell Papa Giorgio, the spy, the silenced MP9 spy watch, which jams people's weapons, which I didn't use, cool. And the spy car, which has missiles and cloaking. I drove the spy car, but I didn't need to use any of that stuff. And then, yeah, Keith was the guy I used to get into Albion. And then when I was inside of Albion, I saw Neville Baker, who was the contractor at Albion, so I could now use him to go back in. I played so much of this game that it was one of those instances, Huber, where, like, I went to bed that night and I was like, yeah, so when I play it tomorrow, wait a minute. Like, I don't have that game. I was already thinking. Yeah. And so it was tough. Like, I grabbed a couple people just because I thought that would be fun, but it's going to be interesting to see, like, really how much time I'm just, like, staring at somebody, like, waiting at a bus stop, like, do I want you?
Yeah.
I want you on the team. I don't know. I'll tag you. Maybe I'll get back to you later.
There's so much potential with recruiting and planning missions, and depending on who you have, the way the mission plays out. That stuff all sounds so exciting.
And finally, Barbara O'Shea, the older character that I literally just grabbed because of her age. I was just looking down the street like, you.
Look at her old lady.
Who's a hacker, like the one that they showed in the trailer. She's got key steal, unlimited range, which means it's just easier for her to grab key information to open doors. Fast hacking, so she has short cooldowns on her on her hacks. But low mobility, no cover, no sprint. Yeah, I downloaded some stuff for her to be like, hey, look, that stuff you were looking for, I downloaded it. And she's like, oh, thanks. And I'm like, join DedSec. And she's like, I need you to rescue a buddy of mine. So then I had to go do that.
I also love that there's multiple characters too, Jones, because like I was saying about Marcus, is he's not a killer. It just feels wrong anytime you would take someone out. So I tended to avoid it and played more passively. But like GTA 5, switch into Trevor, let's cause chaos.
Yeah.
So I like this, that it's like, okay, well, I'll switch to the hitman and now I'll go into this mission guns blazing versus, this more chill passive character. So I do like that. That definitely opens up more possibilities, because I tended to play Watch Dogs 2 passively throughout the whole game. So it'll be nice to kind of swap back and forth between carnage and stealth.
And I did a lot of swapping. I definitely brought in characters that I felt that were right for certain missions. But like, again, I only played as 7 different people. So recruitment missions aren't quick. They definitely takes a while. You got to invest in somebody, that you want to bring in for levels. And like I said, the only thing that could just to potentially downplay people's expectations is not that you don't have this freedom. I think when Legion got announced, I think the way I saw it explained is that it doesn't work outside in, it works from the inside out, where once you pick a person, then it fleshes out their world. You see where they live, who their friends are and stuff, where, when you see people walking down the street, they don't all automatically have those backstories. And there were times in the demo, and I imagine more times later in the story, where the game kind of winks and nudges, and they're like, do whatever you want, but if you grab a taxi driver, if you grab somebody who can bring in a drone, if you grab one person that I saw was a news reporter who I didn't highlight her, but she could bring in a drone that she then uses for reporting. And so it's like, okay, I would need that for this specific mission. So whereas I do have the freedom, I'd be an idiot if I didn't pick this one person. But then I could see people. There's just gonna be a lot on people in social media that are just like, look at my crew, and it's just all old people, or just all transients, or just all like. Anything you can do, especially later on in the game, to like, I'm going to make this interesting, or I'm going to, this person would just naturally hate that company, and so I'm going to bring them, just to really stick it to them. It's going to be interesting to see how that factors in, or if it could potentially be too easy. There's some characters who are just too built, which is maybe why they don't get into leveling, so you don't like just focus on one person and really like bulk them up to do everything.
And there's still permadeath, right? If someone goes down, I remember
the only one death I had, they were just arrested, and so I did not really get into how that would activate. And it was interesting. It was a cop too, so like the cop went down and like the cop's been arrested. I was like, that's fascinating. And so I don't know. Again, the stakes, like the combat was fun, but I was not really put into situations. One part I got stuck because I wasn't paying attention to what I was doing, and so I did not get into situations that I would call like extremely difficult, but you can potentially make it challenging for yourself if you want to. And I will, like I said, most certainly spend way more time thinking about who I bring in at what time, and obviously I think you're stuck with a specific cast in the beginning of the game, and when you get to the point where you can just kind of branch out and grab people, I will definitely be a bit more judicious when I decide who joins Clan Jones, DedSec, Jones Division. But I had a blast, man. Like I said, I was hungry for it later on. There was definitely lots more stuff that I wanted to do, and I am the type of player that you introduce some kind of side quest arc or some kind of other ability that I can get. poof, there goes the campaign for a good solid 6 to 7 to 8 hours in an open world game. And so when I get to the point where it's just like, I realize like, oh, okay, there's all these different divisions. Again, there's like the mob, so you can bring somebody in from them, you know, that it could potentially be working with them or against them. And it's just like, I'm going to want to go get one of each. You know, I'm going to be upset when I can't get someone. And the game's like, just play a little bit more of the story, and then we'll let you get somebody from the government or whatever, another spy. And I'm like, I want a spy now. You know, so it'd be interesting to see how damn distracted. I don't know if I want to review this, you know, because it's like, this is going to be a, 120-hour game by the time I get to the end of it. Because, I'm curious how many caps there are on specific on the people that you bring in, or if there are, if you just get used to kind of, ditching some people or bringing in others, or how those restrictions work. But was able to get the right people that I needed, was able to get through the missions, and there's definitely more going on here than I had the time to check out. Definitely. But sold. That Watch Dogs, man, that's fun stuff. I think they have a good. They're doing so much new stuff that it feels like all the hacking that you love from Watch Dogs 2 is like just a great, baseline that they can build off of.
Yeah, my only fear is by having these characters rather than a central lead. Marcus is... I love Marcus so much, and I was so invested in his story, especially coming off of Aiden Pierce in the first game. Like, Marcus is so well done that I hope they can capture that.
You may never really get that satisfaction, You might fall in love with one of these characters, but they never really do enough. Everything that they do is kind of filling in blanks of a conversation and not necessarily driving their character forward. Yeah. So that probably will be the cost. I don't know. There was nobody that I really identified as like, you're the lead. It was just like, here are the people that are going to be in your ear when you're on a mission, and these are the people that you can play as. Man, I'm going to be recruiting until 5 a.m.
Forever.
This thing. Thanks for the chat, Heber.
Thanks, Jones.
Bit of a wank stain, aren't you?